Welcome to Make Your Mark Live. This is Mark Moyer, and I'm super excited to be having this particular recording today with Nick. And Nick is hailing from Michigan. Thanks for being on board with the Win Again Academy. Say hiya.
Hey Mark, it's good to see you, man.
Likewise. And today we've got a lot to cover because many people talk about some of the challenges that all of us are facing with this whole virus stuff, especially mental, physical, professional, emotional, all kinds of things. And a lot of that does tie into our brains and our performance and the brain performance. And many of us want to know, well, is this something that how we're going to emerge from this? And if we're athletes or athletic, how can we emerge better? How can we really work on that brain to have a better performance, to be able to really allow and impact the rest of our bodies, which impacts our lives and how we think and how we operate and so forth. But before I dive into a lot of that stuff, I guess I wanted to start in with, you and your background. I mean, you're from Michigan, you went to college in Michigan, but what was it what got you started in this whole area? What made you say, the brain?
Yeah, I think it's kind of an interesting story. You may not, but I actually went to business school, thought I was going to be handling people's investment accounts for my whole life. But it's one of those things, it's somebody you know. I happen to know one of the psychologists who started our company. Got my wife a job working for them shortly after they opened, and just started to see what they were doing, and had some personal experience with it. My wife actually started to do the program. Really helped her to deal with like anxiety issues that she'd had. Like, hey, I'd love to be a part of this. I have no idea what you guys do. I took Psychology 101 in undergrad, but I'd love to be a part of this. So that was going on 14 years ago, and have just kind of grown with the company ever since. Had to go back and get more degrees, and but it's a fun spot that I fill now between balancing the clinical side of what we do and the business side of what we do.
That's great. And look, obviously, it's when you do work that's fulfilling because it's helping others. I mean, that goes a big way to doing something that you love doing. And in this case here, I know you do a lot of work with athletes and non-athletes, but tell me a little bit about, I think some people tend to think when you're talking about improving your brain's health, they think, oh, well, that just may mean sleeping more or maybe eating better or taking care of you. But tell me a little bit in your opinion of, what does it mean to have a healthy or healthier brain?
Yeah, I think we now are starting to view the brain like we do the rest of our body. But somewhere along the line, years ago, somebody decided, let's completely separate the head from the rest of the body. And we will treat the body medically, data-driven. You measure the organ, you look at it before you treat it. Well, from the neck up, it's, well, tell me about your symptoms. And based upon what you say, I'm going to diagnose you with something, and in a lot of cases, give you a pill. Well, our approach is to say, well, hey, no, let's look at this holistically. And because everything works together. So the more we can spend on the front end looking, okay, what's bringing you to us, whether you're struggling with something or doing pretty well. And then let's look at your brain and figure out how the brain is firing and develop a training plan, just like you'd go to the gym and work with your personal trainer, develop a physical workout routine. Let's develop a workout routine for your brain as well. And that's really starting to resonate with people as time goes on, because it makes sense that we would treat the brain just like the rest of the body.
Well, of course, because when people go to the gym or however they work out, a lot of times they're focused on, today we're working on the arms, the other day the legs, the other day the glutes, the different parts, right? But interestingly, we don't focus on working out different parts of our brain. And I like to think that at all times, 100% of my brain is firing away and cranking, but at the end of the day, I'm sure it's about 3% or something. But what is the actual? I'm curious to know. Is there an actual number associated with like percentage of the brain that we actually tend to use at different times?
Yeah, the brain is very dynamic. It's always working. It's really cool when we get these full caps on people and you can put them through a variety of tasks. You can see, depending on what somebody's doing, yes, certain parts of the brain will light up more than others. And I think it's really cool to think about, like I always think of my daughter who's 12, and when she's playing the piano, which when you're doing music, it is really cool to look at a brain and all the different areas that are activated as you're trying to read and then perform and then hear. Yeah, all these different parts light up. And so in certain individuals that are functioning really well, it's a really cool kind of symphony to see what's going on. But then there's other individuals who maybe aren't functioning as highly as they would like. As they're doing those same tasks, the brain doesn't light up as efficiently as it does for other people. And I think that's what allows us to do what we do, is we have the technology to be able to look at this like we maybe couldn't do 15 or 20 years ago.
That's really interesting. So is there, putting your company aside for a minute and your services aside and so forth, but is there, like, give me a sense of how would I know, or would I know, or is there a way to tell if there are certain parts of my brain that are not really firing on all cylinders, or any cylinders, I guess?
Yeah, I have yet to look at a person's head that there's not a brain in there. So I'm confident even we would find something.
Good luck.
But yeah, it still goes back to how am I functioning and performing? That gives us the first kind of indicators. Are you keeping up with your peers, whether you're a kid or you're a professional or you're an athlete? How easy are things coming? Do I feel like I'm functioning like I should? And then what we do now know with medical imaging, whether it be MRIs, QEEGs, our brain is actually producing new cells every day, even well into adulthood. Now, we also know that if you aren't treating your brain well, those cells will die off very quickly. They'll kind of get pruned off. So that's where you start to get into these healthy lifestyle habits, and you can start to look at, well, what are you doing to support that growth and maturation of your brain every day? And if you aren't doing these things, whether it be as simple as just a good diet and exercise, you probably aren't maximizing what your brain is fully capable of. Again, no different than looking at somebody who maybe outwardly appears physically fit, but if you know their nutrition's horrible and they're not exercising, they're really not as healthy as they could be.
Now, I guess to make some people happy, including myself, maybe, I mean, is there sort of, do you need to be one of these fitness buffs to be fully activating? Is it just something where you're, as long as you're active enough, or you're taking a walk around the block or something, or is it something where you really need to be putting in a full workout every day?
Well, I think that it varies from person to person, quite honestly. There are some people that just genetically, they are wired a certain way to have a stronger brain. Or get jealous of those people. But yeah, there is something to it. Again, what we're understanding out the brain, not just at our company, but in our field, is this is so much like physical activity, that anything is good for you. And yeah, going for a walk is great. But the more intentional you are about how you exercise your brain, the more your results will get. When we meet with folks, I always think of our more mature adults that are maybe coming to us for memory loss. One of the first things we try to do is get them to be more active. And some of them are living a very sedentary life. Yeah. And if I say, hey, I need you walking 10,000 steps a day, that's a non-starter. I'm setting them up for failure. So we'll just try to do small little nuggets. Say, hey, can you give me 10% more? Come back the next week. Yeah, I was doing 10% more steps every day. And then you just kind of get them that momentum, those quick victories, and that goes a long way for folks too.
And that's fabulous. And there's different elements of, or ways you can sort of maintain your health, because it's as you said, it's diet, it's exercise, but it's also sleep. And I know some people may require more than others or less than others and that sort of thing. But in your opinion, anyway, is there such a thing as people are wired differently to the extent that they only need a certain amount of sleep, or some people need more, or should everybody get X amount? How do you feel about that?
There are definitely those outliers, those people that, how do they do so well on 5 hours of sleep? Right. Those are outliers. Again, it's pretty convincing that most people are going to need 7 to 9. And, we really worry about the quality of the sleep more so than the quantity even. So when we're talking with people, it's like, even if you're getting that 8 hours, are you waking up feeling rested and ready to go? if you're not, yeah, you were laying in bed long enough, but if the quality's not good, we've got to work on that, because we really, the quality is so important. Getting into those proper stages of sleep is really what we're most interested in.
Now, do you find that um, if somebody is stressed about something, whether it's their job or their something is bothering them, and they may get their 8 hours of sleep, but they wake up and they're like not waked up ready to go, but waking up going, oh crap, another day. Is that's I'm assuming that's having an impact as well.
Yeah, that's probably an indicator of the poor quality. So like more or less the first half of your sleep is for large muscle restoration. So you're physically recharging. So if you're one of those people that, yeah, you crash and you hit the pillow,
Right.
and then you sleep for a few hours and you're kind of up and you're restless the whole rest of the night, the last half of your sleep is primarily for your brain restoration and storage of memory and cleaning up the brain. That's what you're missing out on. So if you just compound that day after day, yeah, one, you're kind of going to feel like crap the next day because you didn't
Yeah.
get a good night of sleep. But then there's the long-term consequences where you're not having that restoration of your brain taking place. And that can then lead to things like memory loss down the road. So again, the quality of that rest is so crucial.
That's interesting. So, uh, we spoke a little bit before, and we've talked about how there are some parts of the brain that are mostly dormant or completely dormant. How are, give me a sense of, or an example of some of those areas and how you can kick them into higher gear.
Yeah, so we have a whole curriculum that we walk people through. And I think one of the cool things that our team has been able to do is in terms of our exercise curriculum, there are certain exercises that you can do that will activate different parts of your brain. So we'll map that out for people. There are also different cognitive games that you can play, even online, that are designed to promote different activity in your brain. One of the things that we're always interested in for a lot of our folks is executive functioning. That's more frontal lobe activity. So there are certain activities and games that you can play to kind of wake up those parts of the brain. So again, a lot of combination of movement and then very particular, even though they're games, they still actually do something to those different parts of your brain.
That's interesting. So, because, for example, my father, he's over 90 years old, but he spends, and I'm not kidding you, hours a day on Sudoku. I mean, he just loves doing that. Um, I mean, it's pretty obvious it's helping the cognitive aspect of things, but what part of the brain is that impacting?
Well, this is the cool thing about the dynamic part of our brain. It's going to not just do one area. It can impact many different things. So it's going to probably impact frontal lobe a little bit. Can also do our temporal lobes as he's trying to process visual input and critically think as well. This is the cool thing where when you look at people's brains that have been impacted by seizure activity or injury or stroke, the brain can rewire itself sometimes. So even if that part of the brain that we would normally think is lighting up in that activity, other parts of the brain are lighting up as well. It's really fascinating how our brain was designed to adapt to whatever's thrown at it.
That's really cool. So we've got like some of the things that you can do in terms of maybe some of the games and so on. And it's interesting. Um, part of my concerns with when I see my teenage son playing video games is that it just seems like so much is happening at once with the images and the flashes of light and this and that and the sounds and the all this stuff. And I think as a parent, I'm worried that that's going to fry his brain or something. But on the other hand, people say no, if anything, that's really stimulating a lot of it. And I often wonder, what side is who on, and what's the real case here. But give me a sense of if you've got any sort of, whether it's empirical evidence or anything that suggests that either this stuff is good for you, bad for you, for them, or again, is it sort of dependent on who you are and how much you play and that sort of thing?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot there that we got a different direction we go. I think, genetically, some people are wired a certain way. So they're going to be more predisposed to react a certain way to things.
Hmm.
We know that, yeah, a lot of screen time, generally speaking, is probably not great for you. There's a lot of the blue spectrum light even that we take in, that really impacts a lot of chemical releases in our brain, which can impact our sleep-wake cycle. So that alone, just being up late into the evening, playing a flashing, intense game, not good for your sleep-wake cycle.
Hmm.
And then if you are constantly exposed to like violence and those types of things from a psychological standpoint, you do start to normalize
Hmm.
those types of things. And then there's other games too, though, that maybe aren't as violent, where they've actually been able to measure that people start to zone out. We see this a lot just with TV watching, where I just think this is really cool. This was something I read years ago. Some researchers were measuring brainwave activity, people watching TV, and the brains would tend to zone out during the show. But as soon as the commercials came on board, the brains became much more active and alert.
Hmm.
I don't think it was a coincidence. I think these people figured out, these advertisers, that, hey, I'm going to sell more product if the people is paying attention to whatever I'm selling. I don't want them to stay zoned out like they are during the show. I need to stimulate them so they can remember my product. So yeah,
Interesting. So
visual
like,
and auditory input is our brains respond intensely to it.
so when a commercial comes on for either bacon or beer, I'm pretty stimulated. That works pretty good.
They're probably the best. The beer guys are the best at stimulating the brain.
but um, but it's funny with it with a TiVo, now you can bounce past the commercial. So I guess I'm just in a steady state of being in a fog, I guess. I don't know.
Totally zoned out all the time.
But anyway, so also though, speaking of beer and bacon, but to the diet side of things, one of our participants asked, well, talk about fish and fish oil, mega oil. I mean, are there certain types of food that are better for the brain and for your thought than others?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we have a memory boot camp program that we specifically designed for folks concerned about memory loss. And a large component of that, we talk about diet. And I would say, generally speaking, it's based upon Mediterranean principles. It's not a strict Mediterranean, though. My approach with diet is it's a very sensitive topic for a lot of folks. And so if we go in and say, hey, all this junk that you're eating is bad, you got to stop it, I'm going to lose them, because they already know that they're eating bad food for the most part. So we actually do try to introduce some of the good stuff. We've got these checklists that we'll go over with people, these charts of different brain boosting foods. And yeah, fish is on there. It could be as simple as like blueberries, though. Those are great for your brain. So if we say, hey, before we meet again, can you add in one of these things? And they realize, hey, it's not that hard to eat blueberries or some nuts. And they start to fill up on the healthy stuff, they're naturally going to start to have less and less of the bad stuff, because you're going to feel better when you eat good stuff. Same thing, we go for supplements too. I think somebody had mentioned different supplements. Yeah, there's some very specific supplements we'll look at. Fish oils, vitamin D, vitamin B, folate combos that do some very great things to our overall brain health.
Now, speaking of the supplements, as you said, somebody asked about nootropic. Are there any that sort of, I mean, the supplement world is so, it's almost like the Wild West a little bit. And I think everybody, if you ask 100 people about their opinions, you'll get 150 answers, right? But,
yeah.
But is there, like he asked about nootropic, but are there any that stand out that you'd recommend, or maybe you'd rather not recommend? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I would say generally speaking, if you're going to do supplements, you want to do it right. It's worth spending money on it. Probably not worth going to the drugstore and just buying the generic brand. Again, we have kind of our trusted go-tos for the memory, like I just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that we're really starting to work with some other companies on, and especially this whole COVID world and not being able to go for testing, is it's becoming easier and easier to do some of these at-home tests to evaluate where you maybe are deficient in different areas, and then tailor a very specific supplement regimen to you based upon what your body needs. That's getting closer and closer to becoming scalable. And then I think in time, then it becomes more affordable when it's more accessible.
Absolutely. And that's probably a safe answer. I think that there's all kinds of different schools of thought about which supplements can work and which can, and vegan, not vegan, this and that. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest victory is just being aware of what makes your body feel better and what makes you more alert and more rested when you sleep and that sort of thing. So that's really good. Now, there are different types of brain. I don't want to say, I don't know if I'm using the right term, injuries, but and conditions and so forth. But there's some people that have that are ADHD. There's some people that are depressed. They feel anxiety and so forth. Are there some things that they can do without medication that can help? I mean, I know we've covered a lot. I mean, should I assume diet, sleep, exercise kind of stuff, or is there separate things they can do?
Yeah, I mean, those are all generally good things. And like when I talk to different groups, I always bring up those things because I view those as tools in our toolbox that we
Hmm.
talk to people about all the time. And I think if you do any of those things right, it's going to generally be good for you. You know, again, then we start to get into the heavier lifting and the more precision. And these are types of things that we get into in our program of developing a specific brain training program to the individual. Because yeah, the reality is for a lot of these conditions in our Western world, medication is kind of the go-to. I'm not anti-med. I think it's a great short-term mechanism for a lot of folks.
Right.
But I'm always looking at what's the long-term plan? Is there an exit strategy for whatever medication you're on? Because there should be. Um, they weren't designed to be taken every day for the rest of your life. So that's kind of where we come into play with our different programs that we offer to develop that long-term plan.
Now, I'm assuming that you're not the only person on the planet or in the country and so forth that has programs and ways to, I guess, increase your brain's health and performance, and especially for athletes who really seek an edge. And it may be, again, when you're an athlete, you don't need to be 10% or 100% or whatever is better. You just need to be 1%. I mean, you just need to have that edge. And um, I think we've gotten to the point almost where physically, I don't want to say we've reached our limitations, but you can't run too much faster than you're running now. You can't throw a fastball more than 100 and couple miles an hour yet anyway, and that sort of thing. But there are other ways you can definitely make an edge. I mean, in the old days, when I say old days, I just mean 20, 30 years ago, you'd have athletes who didn't think twice about going out the night before a game and having a bunch of beers and sleeping 3 hours and getting ready for game time. Now it's completely different. When I was in college and I played rugby, I mean, it was rugby surrounded by a lot of beer. And it was rugby, and then we just drink a lot. Nowadays, at least where I went to college, they don't drink for 4 days solid before and after a match, and they're very heavily regimented. So it's a completely different line of thought. But in your opinion, is that sort of the new thing that people are going to be much more focusing on this now?
Yeah, I think very quickly the space that we work in is becoming busy. So it's a good thing, but it can also really be a bad thing in a lot of ways too, because everybody wants to get in. So then you kind of cut corners and all of that. I find that I meet with a lot of teams on a regular basis and talk to them what we do. And our competition, if you will, is, yeah, we're not the only people that do neurofeedback. There's 15,000 people worldwide that are doing what we do. But then there's the wearable companies that are out there that, hey, slap this on, it's going to give you a bunch of data.
Right.
But what we're finding is nobody knows what to do with that data that they're
Right.
collecting. So again, our approach is we've worked really hard to take something where there's a lot of people doing this, but make it scalable and easy to do, but still provide great value to the individual. Again, whether it's a pro athlete or my 8-year-old son or a C-suite executive somewhere. Because I mean, your point is well taken. I mean, if you watch The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan thing, they were drinking beer all the time in the locker room. That just doesn't happen anymore. And every team has nutritionists. Every team down to junior high, they're doing weights now. You're right. The competitive advantage just is much smaller there because they're all doing it. They're all trying to figure out, how do we handle the mental side, because that's where there still is a huge advantage to be gained.
So, I mean, look, your area of expertise is, I mean, you do a lot of work with athletes and teams, and it can be younger, older. I mean, my guess is obviously I consider myself a world-class athlete, as you can imagine. But I don't know if people listening can't see me rolling my eyes, um, but I think that at any age we can improve our brain's performance. And but do you feel that a lot of what you're trying to get out there is I mean, I'm assuming it's applicable to anybody, even a sort of a healthy teenager or a young adult or something who maybe feels like they're just not, the synapses aren't firing all the time, or maybe they don't even need to. Maybe they just want to go from really good to really great.
Yeah, again, we got our start working with kids, and I still love that part of it because I think, man, if I can take an 8 or a 10-year-old who's struggling in school and they're going down a certain path, but we can intervene that young, their path is going to look completely different. I mean, that is so exciting to me still. Um, but yeah, then we can also work with somebody who's doing fairly well. But to your point earlier, if I can get 3 or 4 or 5% better, that's huge for somebody. Or again, now we just wrapped up this clinical trial, 18-month clinical trial on memory loss. These were people with advanced memory loss in their 60s and 70s. And after 3 months of training, their brains looked completely different. Their memory improved significantly. Those that were struggling with sleep and depression, it all got better because their brains were stronger. And so that is exciting too, going from one extreme to the other, and then everybody in between realizing our brains are amazing. And with just some moderate changes and intervention over a very short period of time, you can significantly change how you're functioning. It's really cool stuff.
Now, and what I'll tell you, because I'm like to think that with certain things I'm pretty ignorant. I often wonder, gee, if I was to go through a program, let's say like yours, and let's say I wanted to have that 3, 4, 5% improvement, which, as you said, that's actually life changing. I mean, people think, well, gee, what's 3%? Well, 3% puts you ahead of a whole lot of other people in a whole lot of categories, just that little bit. So with that said, but one of my concerns is, well, I don't want to, I mean, maybe I watch too much TV and I see things where there's big things strapped on here and I'm getting zapped and electrocuted and all kinds of things. And then I'm taking all these really crazy bad medicine, medications and so forth. Is it all that stuff, or is it a lot safer, I'm assuming?
Yeah, no,
There's no
everything we do is
Frankenstein?
completely, yeah, there are some wires, but yeah, everything that we do is completely non-invasive. So nothing ever goes into your brain. We are simply recording how your brain is firing
Mm-hmm.
and then displaying that on your screen and showing you, hey, how is your brain firing? And then based upon that, we can develop a training plan. That's the coolest thing is everything is data driven. And that's, again, unique in the whole mental health space, which, again, I mentioned at the beginning is kind of a symptom driven thing. How do you feel? Well, now we have the ability through an app on your phone and a little piece of hardware in your head to be able to start to correlate that. Say, oh, you're telling me you're not sleeping well. Well, hey, look at when we look in the middle part of your brain, you've got a large deficit in your slow brain waves. Showing somebody their brain is so fun because it kind of it validates the person. It says, okay, I'm not making this up. There's a reason why I'm functioning this way. Or I
Yeah.
always thought I could do a little bit better, that I could focus a little bit better, and I can see it now. The visuals are really cool when you're looking at somebody's brain.
That's interesting. A friend of mine is involved with a company that they do work with athletes who have suffered concussions, especially football players. But what they try to do is get them to use an app on their phone where every day they get sort of effectively almost like a 2 minute or 5 minute, I don't remember how long it is, but almost like a game for them to play that measures their memory loss effectively. And so it might be, I don't know, advanced game, whether it's Sudoku, tic-tac-toe, or, whack-a-mole, or who knows whatever it is, but it's something that they then can go to doctors and say, look, here's the measure of this stuff, and it looks like it's either plateauing or starting to go downhill or whatever it is. But to me, from what I understand, the whole idea of gamifying a lot of this stuff because look, it's one thing to get me to strap on something on my head and look at an app, but if I think that it's creepy or crazy or too medical or something, I might just be like, you know what, screw it, I'll go back to TV. But if it's something where I might say, look, I can get better, plus, hey, look, a fun thing to do, or this is really interesting to see, or as you said, it's fascinating for people when they see what's going on with their brains. It's all about engagement. It's getting people to want to be involved and to want to improve. I'm one of these people that, and I'm probably, I shouldn't be saying this, but I'm not a fan of the gym or lifting weights, because to me, there's no competition. I like to compete. So other than me competing against some big buff dude or something like that on how many things I can lift or whatever, and that doesn't get me fired up. But if it's something where maybe I'm riding a bike against other people, or I'm canoeing against other people, whatever it is, where there's some sort of competition, then count me in. And I think we're all sort of wired in a similar way, where certain things get us excited to do certain things, and certain things will turn us off from that. What do you feel is, maybe a big hurdle, or some of the big hurdles that you've seen people face when they want, when they're trying to do this sort of thing and they won't do it? Or are there any hurdles?
Oh yeah, totally. There's a million excuses that we all have to not get ourselves better. I think the big thing was always time. Oh, I don't think I have the time for that. Well, now for the last 8 or 9 weeks, we have all the time in the world. Yeah, it's like we can't go anywhere. So that one has gone away, temporarily.
Mm-hmm.
And so that to me is always the biggest one. And I think that's what really caused us to launch our mobile platform. Because before this, yeah, people had to drive to one of our facilities 2 to 3 times per week for an hour-long appointment for 3 months. That is a big time commitment.
Yeah.
Totally get it.
Yeah.
And it takes time. It's just like going to the gym. You don't lose 10 pounds overnight. You got to be really dedicated. No, I know if I work out, the payoff will be there. But you got to have that faith. Same thing with your exercise and your brain. You got that faith that I'm going to put in all of this time and it's going to pay off. Some people have it, some people don't. So we're constantly looking at ways to make it easier for them to get better.
So I think, it's funny now, we've seen for years the fitness people that they'll put the picture of the person, before and after, right? But what ends up happening is, again, someone, I'll say, like me, or friends I know,
People know, yes.
people I know will look at the guy that might be a little overweight and say, you know what, I'm okay with that. That works. I don't want to, I don't want to go through all that to get to this, So I think it's, sometimes it needs to be a little bit more than that. I mean, sometimes it's something where maybe you either need to scare people a little bit and say, look, you can feel free to be 65 and suffering from Alzheimer's and not knowing your family and not being able to hug your daughter when she gets married and all, start painting pictures like that, along with imagine being 85 years old and remember everything as if it happened yesterday, and I think sometimes that, I feel like I'm giving you business advice here, and I got to get out of that mode a little bit. But I think what you're doing is great, and I think it's something that all of us and whoever's watching and participating, and myself included, I think I'd love to know more about this, because quite frankly, just getting even the smallest advantage would be a huge boost for me and for all of us. So tell me a little bit about, and I'm going to do we'll do a little bit of a mini promo about what you do in your company to an extent, because I want people to know that this kind of thing is not as hard as people think. It's not as expensive as people think. And people can get more details on your website and so forth. But give me a quick sense of today anyway, what is someone's commitment to
Yeah.
the program to see results?
Yeah, the bar is really low. We've tried to make it even easier just in light of how we all function. So yeah, everybody is welcome to visit our website, neuropeakpro.com. And we have resources there that talk about our evaluation process and our training programs. Yeah, the barrier to entry is fairly low. We can send out the equipment. I keep mine on my desk. It's this little case right here.
Okay.
You download our apps on your phone, and that's everything you need right there. The evaluation we do via Zoom, just like this format. We actually walk you through how to move the sensors to different areas of your head. And we walk you through your brain map right in real time, as well as your HRV, your heart rate variability assessment. So everything is done in this platform. You don't have to be touched by anybody, come into close contact with anybody. It's all done in the comfort of your home. And right with that, you'll know exactly how your brain is firing. We're going to talk through with you, well, what prompted you to reach out to us? What are you hoping to improve? How does that correlate with what we're seeing in your brain? If after that evaluation, you're like, hey, that's cool information, I'm good, I'm done, that's your only commitment. But if we talk about and find things that you'd like to improve, well, you've already got all the equipment you need. We can get you started on our 3-month training program that's specifically tailored to how your brain functions.
Well, that's great. So now for those who suffer with ADHD or with anxiety or with depression, is this the sort of program they can go through and then go back to, reassess how they're being treated, or is it a substitute, or is it in addition to?
Yeah, this is very much a peak performance program. So we have our clinical routes where people would come into our offices and they were diagnosed with these different conditions. A lot of them, their goals were to avoid going on medications or to maybe reduce their dependence. We're applying a lot of those same principles in this peak performance thing. We don't touch medications or anything like that. That is strictly between the client, the patient, and their physician. But yeah, on the clinical side, that is what a lot of people are trying to do is, can I get my brain functioning well enough on its own so I'm not as dependent on other things?
This is all great. And give me a sense of, for those who are athletes who are still performing right now, still playing, not in a men's league, but professionally, and they're being paid to do this, and they need to be at their top level.
Yep.
Is the program sort of very similar for them as it might be for someone like me, as for someone who might be, either a teenager or a senior citizen or something in between, or are they totally different programs?
Yeah, no, I think this is kind of a unique thing. Like, I watch a lot of golf. I can't go to the store and buy the exact same club like my pro client is using. It's specifically made for them. I can buy the knockoff version or whatever.
Yeah.
With our program, though, no, like what we send you is the same thing that our pro athletes are using. Now, we do have a couple of different options, like depending on, what their very specific needs are. Right. But no, I just had an NFL starting quarterback reach out not too long ago, said, hey, I'd like to do your program. So he's doing the same thing that my 8-year-old son does right there. So we try to make it that way so anybody can do it.
That's incredible. One more thing before I continue on, just as a reminder, if you have any questions for Nick or for myself, please make sure you throw those in the Q&A section below. So people can go to your website. You already mentioned neuropeakpro.com. Did I say that right? Yeah.
.com, yep. Or check us out on any of the socials.
Great. And also I encourage you all to reach out to Nick directly on social media, on LinkedIn. Also, he'd be happy to have a chat with you offline and that sort of thing. And so, just to sort of go back a little bit, we've talked about some of the important things that really impact the brain, which is, again, whether it's your sleep, your diet, your exercise, but also, trying to live a less stressful existence. I think that's somewhat challenging now with all this going on around us right now. But, also when you can assess and when you know what's going on up here, I would have to think it's so much easier to know then how to improve that and how to improve your life overall. So obviously, I think the program that you're doing is fantastic, because it's really clearing up something that honestly most people don't know a lot about. I mean, we may have an elbow injury and know that certain exercises will improve the elbow, or or breathing exercises improve the lungs or something. But so few of us really know how to improve this, other than, yes, maybe getting more rest or maybe eating better. But I think this is great. Now, what is and this may be a ridiculous question to ask, but is this something that a large amount of people can do? I mean, have that kind of capacity, or is it a smaller thing now?
Yeah, no, I mean, we have full sports teams that do our program. We have corporate wellness programs too. That's the cool thing, is so much of the curriculum that we've developed over time uh, is just very relevant. There's a price point for this. We have a whole company that will bring us in, and maybe they're not needing to or wanting to do neurofeedback for everybody, but they want to implement all of those different lifestyle things. So we've got a great corporate wellness program that we can work with a company of 10,000 people, educating them on this. That's
uh,
just a great thing about what we've built over time, that I do think like we mentioned, we're not the only people that do neurofeedback. We're one of the few that has built it to scale, because we think this is such a powerful tool for so many people,
right.
that everything we do is designed to, hey, it's got to work. It's got to be clinically relevant and worthwhile. But then how can we impact the largest number of people without losing that efficacy?
So obviously then, for all you participants, if you've got any sort of pull in your companies and want to introduce this to them, I'm sure Nick would be happy to walk your wellness folks there through all this. So look, I really appreciate your time today, Nick. I really wanted to make sure that the Win Again Academy audience and those who tune into these webinars really have an idea of how important it is to really exercise the brain. We all are probably a little bit clearer about the importance of exercising our bodies, or the rest of our bodies. So I'm glad you really straightened that out and gave us some good feedback on that. Before we cut short here, I guess I want to ask you, do you have any sort of final piece of advice or any words of wisdom you want to add in there?
Yeah, no, I think we hit on all the main things. I always think of the term intentional. We should be intentional about how we take care of ourselves. Again, I think a lot of us, we get to a point in our lives where it's like, hey, physically, I want to get better. We can joke about it. You've joked about it a lot, but at the end of the day, we all want to be physically fit, because we don't want the last part of our life to be, rough. So we're going to take care of ourselves physically. We think you should be taking that same approach mentally as well, because you only get one brain. And if you're intentional about how you take care of it, you can really still perform at a very high level well into your elderly years. And I think we should all strive for that.
What a perfect way to end this. This has been fantastic, Nick. And listen, for those of you who have listened to this and want to hear it again, we'll be having the replay up on markmoyer.com. Look for MYM Live on the navigation bar there. We'll have this up the next day or so. And please, by all means, keep on listening into these webinars. They're all fantastic. Nick, you've been great, and I'd love to have you back in the next few weeks to do a follow-up on this. This has been fantastic. And thanks to all of you for your time, and thanks again, Nick. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark. This was fun. Look forward to it.
All right, great. Thank you.